What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Corey Hughes' Bloody History. So, we're going to continue on with Lee Harvey Oswald and the Marines, as per John Armstrong. But first, I want to catch you up on what I've been doing the past couple days. I have been going through Lee Harvey Oswald's military records, particularly the Marine diaries. Virtually every day, or I don't know how often they're done, but every time there's some sort of change in a unit or travel of a unit or anything noteworthy, I find that there are corresponding pages in the diary that keep track of where people were, when they were, what they were doing, and all that stuff. So, what have I found? I found, and I think I have an answer to the most controversial of all these contradictory records. Let's see if I can find this real quick. So, the biggest controversy of all comes during the time of mid-September 1958 through October 7th of 1958. And the controversy here is whether or not Lee Harvey Oswald was in Atsugi, Japan, where he was being treated for venereal disease, or was he in Taiwan? The biggest date in question here is October the 6th. And I believe I have found an answer. And I don't like the answer, honestly. It does back up the two Oswald theory. So what I'm looking at right now is MACS 1 Unit Diary, October 6th, 1958. Diary entry is 1-58. And you can see that it's MACS 1 in Mag 11, 1st MAW, MAW. And this is in Atsugi, Japan. Around this time, Oswald enters into a subunit. Let me see if I have that document here too. There's a couple days where Oswald entered in a subunit of MACS 1. And I think, is this it? I think this might be it. So we have here October 6, 1958. Atsugi, Japan. The third name down is Oswald Lee H. The other diary entry that I have is also marked 6th of October, 1958. Diary entry 158-58. MACS 1, Mag 11, 1st MAW, FMF. And the one at Atsugi is for a subunit, okay? So, it says here on October 6th, Pingtung, this is North Taiwan, and it says towards 3/4 of the way bottom of the page, Lee H. Oswald. So, we do have documentation here, October 6th, 1958, in two different diaries, showing that Lee Oswald is in two different places at the same time. Here's where additional controversy comes in. The additional controversy is that Oswald, when he's in Taiwan, he's on guard duty, and he freaks out, shoots his gun, and then when he's questioned about it, he says, I just can't stand being on guard duty. He got in trouble for this, and that same day, they shipped, that was on the 5th of October, sorry. That was on the 5th of October. On the 6th of October, he was stuck on an airplane, and he spent the entire day in travel. And his first day back to any kind of duty or anything outstanding was on October 7th, the very next day. Now, I went through the the Education Forum, and a couple other of those places where jerk-offs who consider themselves to be fucking experts on Kennedy when they're not experts on anything like to post their bullshit. And so, of course, you have the usual crowd of jerk-offs on that fucking website who wanted to claim that the documentation showing that Oswald was being treated for venereal disease all through September, all through, like every fucking week, we have like 6 or 7 entries that he's being treated for venereal disease. And this is happening at the same time that Oswald is allegedly in in Taiwan. So here we have the diary entries directly on October 6, 58, one in Taiwan, one in Atsugi, each one showing that there's a Lee Harvey Oswald there. The big gripe on the Education Forum over this particular weird anomaly is that they claimed that the medical sheets that were used that document Lee Oswald's urethral discharge starting September 16th, 1958. And actually, he keeps going back until well into November for this to be treated. October 24th, October 6th, he has a discharge. But see, on October 6th, he's still in flight, right? There's no entry for medical stuff on October 7th. A comment in Edward Epstein's book Legend, which I killed the first 100 pages of it yesterday. There's a notation in there that says that Oswald was specifically sent back for medical reasons. And the assumption is that the medical reasons were this urethral discharge. The problem with all of that, and what I believe is now definitive, that I can say definitively, is that Navy hospitals in 1958, particularly at Atsugi and what's the other one called? Ikanoku, or I don't fucking know, whatever the other one is. There's 2 other naval hospitals that are referenced in the Oswald files. One is about 40 miles away, and the other one's about 400 miles away. Each of them have their own unique identifier. And the unique identifier for Atsugi is 3835. And so we have a stamp here. It says NAS Navy 3835 on September 16th, on September, looks like 20th, on September 22nd, on September 23rd, September 29th, and then October 6th, we have a stamp that says NAS Navy 3835. That is the Naval Hospital at Atsugi. I verified that through military records that's showing that the military hospital that was 40 miles away, the one that he was checked out in when he shot himself back in October of 57, that one its code begins with a 39, not a 38. And it's consistently 39, regardless of where MACS1 is. So, at the end of the day, we have 2 different documents. In the diaries, showing that Oswald's in 2 different places. We then have the medical record showing that he was at Atsugi being treated for urethral discharge. And then we have the testimony of, I forget if it was Donovan or Powers. I think it was Powers. I'm not sure. One of those guys, his supervisor. The testimony of him puts him clearly in Taiwan, right? So here's where I think it really gets good. Over this very issue, we have a major contradiction with the Warren Commission and the HSCA. The Warren Commission concluded, in no uncertain terms, that Oswald did in fact go to Taiwan. And he was there and returned October. They changed the dates. The Warren Commission fucked with the dates. They said he came back on the 5th and was treated for VD on the 6th, which is a blatant lie. He was busted on his patrol for shooting his gun on the 5th. He was flown back on the 6th. And then on the 7th, he allegedly goes to the hospital, but we don't have a record of him in the hospital on the 7th. It goes from the October 6th to October 24th. The Warren Commission concluded that he went to Taiwan. Now, the HSCA, what is that, 20 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, something like that, they concluded the Warren Commission was wrong. They said that there's no evidence that Oswald ever went to Taiwan, and that the medical evidence was sufficient to say that he was at Atsugi. So the HSCA concluded he did not go to Taiwan, while the Warren Commission concluded he did go to Taiwan. You can see that this contradictory documentary record was enough to cause that divide between those two investigative bodies, right? So this is a big fucking deal. This isn't just some thing that can be blown off as pure chance or coincidence. So that's what I've been spending a lot of my time on. And I've also found some other information in reference to, I've been going line by line through documents again, like I did starting in 2008. You know, when I started my research on Kennedy, I was putting in 12-hour days, and I'm back there again. So what I want to do now is I want to read a comment, if I can find it, that was left on YouTube. To everybody listening to this on YouTube, just know this is an audio podcast, and it just auto syncs to YouTube. I don't pay attention to the YouTube channel at all. I do get emails of the comments if you leave them. But this comment here was from Paul and Diana Thomas. And Diana Thomas, I know you're listening, and I know you have been accepted into my very exclusive Telegram chat. And I think you should hop in there and work with us on some of your ideas, because I think you're onto something. What you're onto, I don't know, but I think you're onto something. And to everyone else, let me go ahead and read this comment. And this is talking about the Pfister Dental Lab. Remember, the Pfister Dental Lab, which we'll talk about in a little more detail here coming up. There's some contradictory information in regards to the dates and times of when Oswald worked there. And so I don't have an opinion on it yet. So the comment says, bingo, Lee Harvey Oswald did not have a motorcycle, but Gordon Novell did, because his mom bought him one. He testified to this in his depositions on Mary Farrell. Gordon was also into astronomy, space, race cars, walkie-talkies, and radio equipment. He also was in Los Angeles, California, attending the university at the very same place and time that Kerry Thornley was. His dad's parents were Russian immigrants. One of his aunts married a Stern, and it was a Stern who owned the radio station that Ed Butler worked for. Please note, it was also the Stern family that paid for Clay Shaw's defense. Novel's best friend was Rancier Ellinger. It says here Ellinger, Ehlinger, who was Butler's cousin. But I'm in the process of researching a guy named Erlinger, Ehrlinger, who was the head of the Civil Air Patrol in Louisiana, who also employed a woman named Margaret Mary Oswald. A third, basically, Marguerite Oswald, if you would so be inclined. That's what I'm kind of digging into now. I got a huge file on Mary M. Oswald. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but John Armstrong suspected heavily she was involved in this Harvey and Lee situation, as her family was of Hungarian descent. He's got a thing for Hungary. Armstrong does. He really has a thing for Hungary. It says, this came from Erlinger's FBI interview. Not sure why no one wants to look at Novell for the missing pieces when he's right in front of our face. I'll tell you why. Because there's no real evidence connecting him to the assassination. Everything else I've ever looked at has been kind of superfluous for him. I haven't looked into the depth of it that you have, and I hope that you'll join us in my Telegram so we can discuss it further. His son wrote on the genealogy website that Gordon/his mom had created a birth certificate for him with a false name for his real father. Isn't that a red flag? Who went to Clem Cert wanting another birth certificate for Lee Oswald in the 50s that Clem testified to? It was probably a birth certificate for Gordon. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. And I appreciate this comment greatly. So, Diana Thomas, Paul and Diana Thomas, please join me in my chat that you're already invited to, so we can discuss that further. Yeah. So, a lot of crazy stuff is popping up from me studying Oswald's military records. There's a lot of contradictory information. Oswald was supposed to be a radar operator, but we have witnesses who say that he was in a radio group, not a radar group. I know the school teaches both. The Biloxi School was it was a control and communications course, basically, which was radar and radio, two separate courses that took 6 weeks. I believe if you only took one or the other, you could opt to do that too, and it only took 4 weeks. And that will connect to some interesting things with Oswald's schedule, because remember, we have contradictory information on which schools Oswald went to, right? We have information, we have the proof, the documentary proof that Oswald went from basic training to an additional school at Camp Pendleton, to the aviation basics course at Jacksonville. And then we have Daniel Powers, his immediate supervisor at the time, who was there at Jacksonville with him, says that he got on a train with him and they went to Biloxi, and then they did the Biloxi school that started May 4th and went through June the 18th and graduated, and we have the photo from that. However, in Edward Epstein's book Legend, The Secret Life of Lee Harvey Oswald, he claims that Oswald actually drove from Jacksonville to Biloxi, and he did it with Martin Strand. I don't recall if we talked about Martin Strand yet. I'm going to do a whole episode on Strand at some point. But Strand and you can clearly identify him in the photograph at Biloxi with Lee Oswald. But he's also shot to death while on watch in the Philippines on December, that's either the 5th or the 15th, I forget which date. Or was it January? It was January 15th. So basically, he's on guard duty, guarding basically not much. I mean, there's nothing really going on. There has never been a problem on watch. There's no reason to think there'd be a problem on watch. And he ends up getting shot under his right armpit with his own weapon, which is crazy because Marine policy, which is discussed pretty openly, is that at the time you had shotgun. It was called a riot gun, but it was really just a shotgun. And so you had shotgun shells, but those were supposed to be kept in your pocket. It was never supposed to be loaded. And not only was the weapon loaded, but it ended up firing. And when you go through the documents on Martin Strand, it turns out that they ruled that it was not a suicide because his arm wasn't long enough to reach the trigger and shoot himself in the way that he did. The gun was found about 6 feet from his body, and there was nobody around. When you go through the documentation, there was no signs of anybody else being around, and the investigation in the Marines concluded that he was goofing off with his weapon, and he dropped it, and it shot him under the arm, killing him instantly. If you know anything about firearms, that doesn't make any sense at all. No sense at all. Number one, why did he put shotgun shells into the shotgun if that was against policy? He wasn't supposed to load them into the shotgun until there was a problem or suspected problem. But there were shotgun shells loaded into it anyway. And then the idea of dropping a shotgun and having it shoot him under the armpit and land 6 feet from his body, which he's found laying flat on his back, that doesn't make any sense either. I'm an ex-cop. I'm pretty damn good with firearms. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. When you go through the documentation, it becomes very obvious that everyone who investigated this was very suspicious of the incident itself. Ultimately, it was ruled an accidental death. However, we learn a couple things about this incident. We learn, number one, immediately after this happened, rumors started to circulate that Oswald was responsible or that Oswald had been somehow involved in this. The thing is that as far as we know, Oswald was not on watch. He was not on watch, actually, we can say with certainty. He was on mess duty. This is another contradiction in the record that I've discovered. He's constantly listed as being doing AVN electronics, which is the radar operator stuff. But he got in trouble numerous times. So they kept him on mess duty, which is working in the kitchen, right? So that's another contradiction there. Here's the weirdest part of this entire story with Martin Strand. Martin Strand's brother, who's in the Navy at this time, who's a little older than him, I believe. This very same month, Martin Strand's brother is also killed. He's on a Navy ship and he allegedly leaned on something and fell off the boat, and they have never found his body. The same month that Martin Strand shoots himself under suspicious circumstances, his brother allegedly falls off a boat and is never found. This is wild. This is wild. Now, if I was a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, I'm a historian, what direction would I take this in? I would take this in the direction of Martin Strand somehow. Martin Strand, who was in Biloxi with Lee Oswald with the fat neck. If I was conspiratorial, I would say that he sees Lee Harvey Oswald in the Philippines here, realizes it's not the Oswald that he was in Biloxi with, and there's some sort of incident. And if the rumors were that Oswald shot him, maybe he was shot because he discovered that Oswald wasn't Oswald. Nobody knows what happened. This is pure conspiratorial speculation, and it's probably not what happened. But I'm going down this road just for devil's advocate purposes. But what are the odds that Martin Trandle accidentally gets shot, allegedly, with his gun found 6 feet away, and his brother is washed overboard, never to be seen again, the same month, at the same time that he's stationed with Lee Harvey Oswald? And at that time, there were only a couple people who were left from that Biloxi group. It was Daniel Powers, it was Camarada, it was Schrand, and it was Oswald, those 4. There were a total of 6 in the beginning, but that 6, 2 of them got sent elsewhere, so now there's only 4. And if the scenario that I just explained is what actually happened, then you could probably say that there are other guys in the unit were in on it. So if they were going to have some sort of duplicate Oswald scheme in the military, you can say with 100% certainty that there was somebody there babysitting him. There had to have been someone in a position of authority had to be there in order to monitor the situation, if nothing else, right? So, interesting stuff revolving around Martin Schrand. Another interesting thing is the statement from Gorky, or was that his name? Major Gorky, yes. So Major Gorky, there's only one paragraph on one document referencing this. But according to him, Lee Oswald was left the Marines in March of 1959. There's no other indications of that, corroboration of that, anything like that. Because at that time, at March of 59, you've got Oswald appearing at the Lighter Than Air station, which is adjacent to El Toro. Okay. However, allegedly at this exact same time, Lee Oswald is seen at the El Toro base, not the Lighter Than Air base, where he's working in the mess hall. But we know the Oswald and that was by Sherman Cooley, who was another person who knew Oswald from boot camp. He says he saw Oswald in the mess hall. So, did that happen? Who knows? We'll go over the statements of Sherman Cooley at some point. Here's a big problem I have with Armstrong and his Harvey and Lee while he's in the Marines, is that he will make statements, and he tried to boil it down to these people knew Lee and these people knew Harvey. But I'm going through all these people's statements, and I'm sorry, this is contradiction all over it. Contradiction all over it. I can't get on board with Armstrong's conclusions in regards to who knew Lee and who knew Harvey while in the Marine Corps, because he's contradicting himself like crazy, right? It appears as though if he's correct and there's a Lee and a Harvey in the Marines at the same time, it appears that both of them were at a minimum talking about Russian, or rumors had persisted. See, when you actually read the statements of all these people who say that Oswald was a communist and all this stuff while in the Marines, the vast majority of them only know that he was studying Russian or any of this stuff through rumor. There's only a couple people who are like he was diehard, and that's like Nelson Delgado. Nelson Delgado, he's problematic for me, big time. Nelson Delgado, I don't believe his statements. I believe he's lying in his statements somewhere. He's overly emphasizing the Marxist aspect when other people in that very same unit, like Daniel Powers, completely deny that he ever heard Oswald talk about any kind of communism or anything like that. And even those who say he was talking about this kind of stuff, they don't say he was talking about communism. They say he was talking about socialism, which to me and you might be the same thing, but it's definitely something different. It's important for the record. So, yeah, there's a lot of obfuscation, a lot of contradiction. I'm working my way through these records, and hopefully we will get through them in a timely manner. But let me continue with Armstrong's Harvey and Lee in the Marines. And we're at the section that says Warren Commission covers up Harvey Oswald at Pfister Dental Lab in 5758. And like Diana Thomas pointed out, there is some obfuscation and some walking back here in the later years of people who worked at Pfister. To me, the most convincing part of this were specifics named by Palmer McBride, specifically the date and the show that they went to of the opera house where Palmer McBride's father worked. That's a very specific memory. And so if he's telling the truth on that date, then clearly there was an Oswald in New Orleans when he should have been over in, well, at that time he would have been in Natsuki, right? So if Palmer McBride is telling the truth about that one particular incident, forget anything else he said, then I would say that that's pretty damn conclusive that there was an Oswald there. But we can't prove that. And it all comes down to the credibility of Palmer McBride. The reason I'm inclined to believe Palmer McBride is because, number one, he was in the Air Force at the time. And when he heard about this incident, he did not have time to get with anybody and coordinate a story. He basically found out about it, got his shit together, went over and talked to his people in the Air Force immediately, and was in a very timely manner interviewed by their investigators, the FBI, and his story never changed. November 23rd is the date of his written statement. And it was of his own volition. He voluntarily gave the statement. And he was in the Air Force, okay? After this, he'll go on to work for NASA, which means he probably got recruited by CIA. But you never know. To me, minus the CIA potentiality here, this seems like a man of integrity. The vast majority of people in the military who are not into intelligence have integrity. You only start to lose it when you get involved with intelligence. So, if Palmer McBride was involved with intelligence, was he involved with intelligence in 1958? And did he get the job for Oswald, allegedly? We don't know. We don't have any fucking clue. And I fear that this will be a aspect of the story we'll never quite figure out. What I've been doing really in going through all these documents lately is I'm trying to create two separate paths. I'm trying to create a separate path for a Lee and for a Harvey. And I'm trying to differentiate where one was. And I had an idea. I have an idea. I don't know if this idea holds or not. But we have people who are at Atsugi who worked with Oswald for a continual amount of time. But when you look at Oswald's actual record out there, he wasn't there for any length of time. And I'll explain. So there were people out there who said they worked with him every day for 9-10 months in the radar unit, which is kind of weird because he gets there he leaves August 21st, 1957 on the USS Bexar. He arrives in Japan September the 12th. And I don't have any information on Oswald's activities from September the 12th to October the 26th, 1957. I need to know those activities. That's one gap I have here. But that's only a 6-week period until he shoots himself on October the 27th and ends up in the Yokosuka Hospital, not the Atsugi Hospital. He's transferred to Yokosuka, which is 40 miles away. So here we have him he's only there for 6 weeks, and then he's gone for like 3 weeks. Then he's allegedly only back at Atsugi from the 16th to the 19th before he leaves again on November 20th, and he's gone from Atsugi until March 17th. So allegedly he's stationed at Atsugi in the Pacific Coast, which is the Pacific Theater, but really he's only there for 6 weeks, and I have an extra 3 or 4 days that I can't account for. Other than that, he's gone until March 17th because he's in the Philippines where the whole Martin Strand incident happens. Allegedly he's back March 18th. But he is only there, but he appears to be there until June 26th. And it's during this time that we have those multiple dental appointments. Remember at Beauregard in the 9th grade, Ed Vobel said that Lee Oswald got knocked in the mouth and He never says whether his tooth's knocked out, but the picture of Lee Oswald clearly shows him missing a tooth. Okay? So Oswald had to have had some sort of prosthesis. And it is on these dates in the military documents that are dated 3/27, 5/14, and there's another one after that. But during this time period, we have 2 dental appointments in a 6-week period or a 7-week period from March 18th. Or it's 3 months, sorry. It's about 3 months. April, May, yeah, about 3 months. He has multiple dental appointments, and there's a section on the dental form that talks about a prosthesis, meaning a fake tooth. And obviously his fake tooth was one of the problems that broke, and it had to be repaired, which I think is kind of funny because when in the autopsy, in the photos of Lee Oswald's teeth, they're clearly 2 original teeth. And it's definitely the smile of the man who was arrested on November 22nd in the autopsy photos. The teeth were, most certainly. So we appear to have evidence that Oswald, or N. Oswald, is here March 18th to June 26th at Atsugi because of the dental appointments. But then from June 27th to August 12th, he's in the brig, right? So let's look at these dates here. We have September 12th to August 12th, 58. And out of this entire time, he's only at Atsugi for about 4 months, if you don't include the time in the brig, right? But then after September 13th, he's allegedly only in Atsugi until, let me see, November 2nd, 1958, when he sails back to America. And here's where you have the overlap. We have the September 14th to October 6th. We have the documentation, the military diaries, the Marine diary showing that he's away in Taiwan. And when Oswald's stuff ended up in property of Dallas police, they developed some of his film, and some of the pictures that we know of are from Taiwan. So he's then in the hospital again from October 7th to October 13th. Okay, here's the date. We have, oh my God, I'm sorry for the contradiction here, but I just remembered we have this October 7th date on a different form. It's not on the medical form I have that has all the drippy dick stuff. It's on a different form. And he's there from October 7th to October 13th in the Atsugi hospital. So remember, allegedly, he's away in Taiwan, and then he comes back and he's in the hospital. So it feels to me, if you can see the point I'm getting at, it feels to me almost like they're trying to keep him away, right? There's an Oswald working at Atsugi, and they're trying to keep this other person away as much as possible. None of these guys are ever seen in the same place twice. So November 2nd, he sails to November 15th, and let me see here. And then he ends up in November 16th, he ends up in San Francisco. In San Francisco is when he gets a break and he goes and visits Robert in Fort Worth, and that's when he's photographed with the gun with the thick neck and the Marine haircut, right? From there, he returns to I believe he returns to San Francisco, and from there, they all head back to Santa Ana, where he is stationed allegedly at MACS 9. At MACS 9, he is at the Leiterton Air Station. He's not at El Toro, which is 7 miles away, which is a much bigger station. He's at the Leiterton Air Station, which is a helicopter station. Then I have him. It's weird because between this time here, at the end of December, and the beginning of March, he's doing all kinds of testing. He's doing all kinds of aptitude testing. He takes the Russian test. He gets his GED. So it's like they're preparing him between December, what's the date here? December 22nd, when he gets back from San Francisco and his break. It seems like between December 22nd and March, they're just hitting him with a bunch of tests. And then you have some more contradiction, because you have people like Nelson Delgado, who claim to have met Oswald right before Christmas, which is when he shows up, December the 22nd. However, you have a bunch of other people who say they don't meet Oswald until March. Kerry Thornley doesn't transfer in until around that time, and we'll talk about Kerry Thornley here in a minute, because holy shit, did I bust Kerry Thornley big time. Did I bust Kerry Thornley big time? Every word he ever said about his military service, said he was in the reserves and didn't really do much, and then he had 2 years active duty, and then that was it. But that's not true. He had 4 solid years, with the vast majority of it being in training, which we'll get to here in a minute. Let me wrap up this Oswald stuff real quick. So then I have him on January the 19th. He and about 100 people from his unit, I guess, MACS 9, or the larger unit that he was in out there, they all head to Yuma, Arizona, where they participate in a couple weeks worth of drilling and not training, but it was like when you do like a live exercise. There was a live exercise that he did there. And then from there, they went to Camp Pendleton in San Diego for a very brief time. Okay, no, that's at a different time. So, excuse me. He goes to Yuma, Arizona, gets done with the drilling there, goes back to MACS 9, does all the aptitude testing. Then from May 12th to May 14th, he travels to Camp Pendleton for something. And then in August, all of the paperwork starts to come in about the hardship stuff, and then he's given his final discharge on September the 11th. So, all kinds of weird shit going on around Oswald's release from the Marines. I know we're getting off track. I was supposed to do Pfister Dental Lab, but I'm going to ramble continually, and maybe I'll get to it at some point. But I found... damn it, I lost my train of thought. I found a couple things that really interest me in regards to Oswald when he left the Marines, the timing, all that stuff. So it appears as though immediately after he leaves for the Marines in 56, actually, 56. Margarita Oswald starts researching how to get a hardship discharge immediately, right away, like right off the bat. And she must have so something was in the works, and she seemed to jump the gun on her looking into it. The one thing that really struck me was the statement from Major Gorski, I think it was, who said that Oswald left in March. And then Robert Oswald's statement, I don't think I mentioned this earlier. Lee gets out of the Marines, and allegedly he's only in Fort Worth a day or two before bouncing to New Orleans and then going overseas, right? So, but I have a statement from the first statement given to the FBI by Robert Oswald that when he got back from the Marines, he stayed for a couple months. That contradicts everything we know, but it supports the statement of Major Gorski, who said that Oswald left in March. So I'm still digging into that. If you're a researcher and you want something to look into when the hell did Oswald really leave, and is there a possibility he left in March? There are some obscure documentation notes on his sheet of where he was and what he did and all that stuff, but I can't seem to determine what the notes are to indicate whether or not he actually... where he was or what he was doing at that time. A lot of these, and I have multiple sheets with multiple contradictory things here. So let me talk about Kerry Thornley real quickly, because Kerry Thornley's a fucking liar. Kerry Thornley was balls deep in the assassination, plotted with David Ferry, Clay Shaw. He was the bearded beatnik who was at the party with Perry Russo when they talked about killing the president. It's brutally obvious when you study Kerry Thornley that he was the person at the party, and he is also connected with Marina and setting up Oswald in Alice, Texas. He went to Mexico City. I mean, he was all about this operation that they pulled off. But he lied. He's a fucking liar. He claimed that he was graduating high school in 56 and that he just signed up for the reserves, was in the reserves. He had some training in the reserves is what he said, but then he got in and he did 2 years, but that's a blatant lie. So Oswald gets in what year? He's October 56, October 12th, 56. Well, guess what? Kerry Thornley is signed up way before that. He is already at basic training by May 28th of 56. Signed off on by Major R.D. Jones, 5th Battery, U.S. Marine Corps in Pico, California. Then he's got 3-4 months of recruit training from June 11th, 56 to August 31st of 56. Then he's continued to be stationed for more training at Pico, California. He goes from Pico to San Diego and back to Pico. And he is at Pico from September 1st, 1956, all the way through 31st of August, 57. So he's in training nonstop, basically, for a year and a half beyond his initial Marine recruit training. So he's got more training than any other goddamn person I've come across thus far. From there, the 14th of September, he's still at Pico, but he's doing... This is the first one where he's not training. It's his basic AAA man. I can't figure out what a basic AAA man is. And here's another thing that really surprised me, because when you listen to Kerry Thornley, he makes it seem like, it was okay being in the Marines. That was no big deal. But his conduct is through the roof. His proficiency is amazing. He's scoring 4.5, 4.8 out of 5 in conduct, and he's scoring 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 4.8, all in proficiency, which means he's really good at what he does. Okay? So after he gets done with all this goddamn training, he's in training now for a year and a half, from 28th of May, 56 to September 14th, 57. Then he's transferred to, in September 15th, 1957, he's transferred again to the MACS 18 in Los Alamitos, California. And here I looked into this. This is where they opened in 1956 the Joint Operation Training Center, which is all branches of the military, and I'm assuming intelligence because they mentioned intelligence training. All branches of the military have cross training here at this Los Alamos facility, and he is at this. He's at this Los Alamos facility from the September 15th until August 30th of 58. No, October of 58. Okay. So it says the first time he's there, September 15th, 57, he's there for retraining. Then January 31st, on a semi-annual review, he's still in retraining. So he's in retraining for like 4 months. What could he be in retraining for? All the guy's ever done here is basic recruit training, and it looks like 5th Battery, Pico, California. I don't know what he did there. It says basic AAA man and training. So who knows what he was doing? But he's getting retrained. So all he's done is really is training. But now he's getting retrained again. And starting the 31st of July, 1958, he is enrolled in a basic AVN controller operator, which means that's basic flight school. He never mentions he went to flight school. But in July 31st, 58, which is more than 2 years after he's allegedly only in the Marine Reserves, he is learning to fly a plane, where he got a conduct of 4.9 and a proficiency of 4.9. Signed off on by Lieutenant Colonel EI. Looks like EI is the beginning. Ike, EISK, maybe. I can't read that, but if that means something to you. Then here we are again. He's still at Los Alamitos until October of 58, where he's going through, on August 16th, it's mentioned to active duty training. And then on August 30th, from active duty training. And then on October 1st, it again says that he is training at EAD and he's being transferred. And then on October the 20th, 1958, this is before Oswald makes it back from the Pacific Theater, he is now joined up with MACS 4, which MACS 4 will eventually make its way to Japan, but it says here MACS 4 in Santa Ana, California. Okay, never mind. That's correct. That is correct. He's still in Santa Ana at this time. January 31st, he is still at Santa Ana. Here's a problem, another problem with Kerry Thornley's testimony. He's constantly calling this facility El Toro, but Oswald, as far as we know, was not at El Toro. He was only at the lighter than air facility, which was Santa Ana. But Kerry Thornley keeps calling it El Toro when it wasn't El Toro in his testimony. So here you have his interaction starting with Oswald, where he is, this is what I'm gathering from this so far. Okay, he's in here. He's obviously, I don't think he's not connected to Oswald at this time. He's going through basic recruit training. He's doing all kinds of some other training. He's doing flight training. I mean, this guy's getting trained in everything. And then when he goes to retraining, it appears as though they're retraining him now in the radar and the radio and all that stuff, most likely for the sole purpose of putting him in Oswald's unit, which happens on March 18th of 59. March 18th, 59, he's transferred from MACS 4 to MACS 9. He's at MACS 9 with Oswald from March of 59. Let me see. Then it's the next thing here. It says he's stationed July of 59 at MACS 1. This is where things get interesting with Kerry Thornley. Because Kerry Thornley, from this point forward, he is now in Atsugi, Japan. But when he gets to Atsugi, Japan, what does he do? He starts an investigation into Oswald. He talks to Ronald Schwinghammer. He starts asking him questions. He gives him the name of Rick Thornley. He gives him an alias. So why is he sent to Oswald's unit with Oswald for a couple months in 59? And then after that, he's sent to Oswald's unit where he goes and investigates Oswald in Atsugi. He's not in Atsugi very long. He ends up coming back in October of 59. Was it October 59? Well, see, we have some contradiction on when he said he came back to. But this is what I've gathered. I've gathered that Oswald defects while he was there in Atsugi. He hears about it. But then he's back by October or November of that year. And before you know it, he is out of the military in early 1960. After that, he heads to Whittier, California, spends some time with his parents. He connects with a guy named Bud Simcoe, who he was in the Marines with Oswald in March of 59 at Santa Ana. Now, Bud Simcoe, whose real name is Roland Allen, Allen, Buddy Simcoe. It took me a while to find out who this guy was. If you look for Roland Allen Buddy Simcoe, you'll find a Find a Grave post that is extremely vague. And all it says is that he was in the Marines where he learned all the skills that he needed to get through life. And that the rest of his life, he just loved music and he wrote a book and a bunch of stuff. So he actually did write a book. You can't get it like by buying it, but if you look hard enough, you will find a copy of this book that he wrote about himself in the Marines, and he goes on and on and on about his relationship with Thornley. When you read Thornley's 50-page affidavit, he basically says that Bud Simcoe, who was in the MACS 9 with him and Oswald, he believes that that's his like intelligence handler. He believes that guy was assigned to him because that guy kept tabs with him after he left the Marines. They called him and hung out with him and stuff, and they meet up in Whittier, California. He goes to meet him in Whittier when he gets out of the Marine Corps. But he basically, in the affidavit to Garrison, throws Bud Simcoe under the bus. Now, when you read Kerry Thornley's affidavit, to me, is clearly a confession. He links himself to every person, Carlos Marcello, Guy Bannister, David Ferry, all these people, right? So it's clearly a confession letter. Everybody needs to read Kerry Thornley's 50-page affidavit to Garrison. He puts a lot of emphasis on Bud Simcoe in there. And since it's a confession letter, I kind of feel like there's a kernel of truth to it. So I'm going to continue to do my research on Mr. Bud Simcoe, but it appears that Bud Simcoe had a supervisor that Kerry Thornley identified as Lieutenant Ballantyne. I've been unable to locate Lieutenant Ballantyne. You can figure out the spelling. But if you can figure out Lieutenant Ballantyne, please contact me because I'm anxiously trying to figure out who that is. But to me, all of Kerry Thornley's activities while he's in the Marines are seemingly revolving around Oswald. I mean, I might be reading into that a little bit much, but it seems as though, he was put through the retraining, and through the retraining, he learned the radar stuff I don't know why they would do that unless it was to specifically pair him with Oswald. Because Kerry Thornley is clearly intelligence. Clearly. How he was recruited, who knows? He was a Mormon, could have been from that angle. But you don't get to be palling around with David Ferry and Guy Bannister and Clay Shaw and then have the activities that you participated in on November 22nd in Dallas if you're not intelligence. That's all there is to it. So, damn it, I've been rambling this whole time. And I didn't even get to Palmer McBride and Pfister Dental Lab. But that's what I've been working on, guys. It's been driving me up a goddamn wall because a lot of Armstrong's assertions I'm finding are contradictory. But nonetheless, there's smoke, and if there's smoke, there's going to be fire somewhere. But we haven't found it yet. I've done a bunch of more photo comparisons of Oswald while in the Marines and shown people, and a bunch of people clearly think that there's two of them in the Marines. I'm not opposed at all, and I like the idea that there were two Oswalds, and the concept makes sense. But it's the execution and how you would pull off this dual Oswald thing and not have people, not bust you. And that brings us back to Martin Strand. And did Martin Strand bust the operation and figure it out and then maybe even tell his brother, and that's why the two of them got whacked? Because I'm confident that's what happened. Nothing about either of those stories makes any sense. But that's going to do it for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow. And Friday, I'll be on Fresh and Fit. And so I'm in crunch mode because I have to spend the next couple hours and all day tomorrow putting together my slide presentation for Fresh and Fit on Friday. And I'm doing William Ramsey show on Friday afternoon, too. So Friday's going to be a good day for me. But I'm going to wrap it up here, and I will continue with the Warren Commission cover-up of Harvey Oswald of the Pfister Dental Lab on the next episode. So thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.